welcome back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. Yet again, George McMillan III. How you doing, George?
I'm doing fantastic, continuously.
Fantastic. That's excellent. That's better than great. I was expecting you to say great, and I already had a quip that was ready, and I was going to say, are you as great as the U.S. economy is great? Because we already made a joke about that last talk we did. It's only been a couple of minutes for us. It might have been a day or two or maybe more for you, depending on how I choose to upload these, because I have another recording scheduled for today. So lots of talks incoming in the future. George and I are going to be discussing the rest of that, or the rest. What a joke. The continuation of his slide set. The next segment of his never-ending slide set. And for those that are new here, and for some miracle reason, the YouTube algorithm has suggested this video. This is a comedy show. Nothing we say has anything to do with reality. Now, dynamic growth theories made it possible to upgrade Lipset. This is where we left off, George. Do you want to give us a brief roundup and walk us into what we're taking a look into this time?
Yeah, so for people that didn't watch the last one, please do, because everything I do is sequential. The reason why we're going over the unified behavioral theory slide sets, I really thought it was too dense for YouTube. But yes, it's all the curriculum you need to take somebody from a freshman to a post PhD level and an integrated theory of what the social sciences should have been decades ago, of laterally integrated, highly compatible social scientific frameworks that are extremely objective and measurable. So it's working backwards. In the first videos, I work forwards and backwards with them. Here, I always throw in what the 5 frameworks are from evolutionary theories, psychology, government form, political theory, economic growth over population growth, economic theories, and the 4-category geopolitical form model, which is based on more developed countries being higher economic growth, lower population growth, so you get a tighter wage labor market rate, equilibrium rate, and then the third and fourth world, less developed countries tend to have lower economic growth, higher population growth rates, proportions. So they tend to be loose or catastrophically loose wage labor rate scenarios, which can occur for multiple different reasons. But with these frameworks, it covers all the different reasons because the results end up. So then going from this outcome measure to the dependent variable next on the next slide is the per capita GNP function or ratio. In this term, it means economic growth rates over population growth rates of change. So that's the dependent variable. Why do I use that? The per capita GNP ratio as a dependent variable. I use it in the macro sense, not the normal micro sense. But here I mean it to mean, yeah, it's in strict terms, it's consumer spending plus investment plus government spending over N people. So it's usually just written C plus I over G, C plus I plus G over N people. So what that means is economic growth rates of change over population growth rates of change, just reading the chart here, or it combines the disciplines of economics and demography into a whole integrated discipline. It's also supply and over demand and within economic theory, or you're talking about using present day frameworks to mathematize the old Enlightenment qualitative theories. It means Adam Smith over Thomas Malthus, if you look at it in those terms, or it means economics over demography related to the geopolitical forms, or it's economic theory over in-person polity relating economics to political government forms. So in this case, the per capita GNP ratio is the qualitative framework crossroads of the philosophical and social sciences, because it integrates everything on the social sciences around it, as well as you can take this and mathematize the entire range of philosophical theory above it. Now, you can mathematize the whole range above it because somebody said it's a materialist conception. No, it's actually, if you have a design pattern in nature, you have a designer. And therefore, this thing really argues, really bolsters a intelligent design, idea, hypothesis. So it really, favors that. Also, when we get to the end of this section, when I start to get into the psychology books of it, Freud's ego, id, and superego model really is inadequate. The way that Erich Fromm turned it into the Biophilus necrophilus character orientation dichotomy, it really favors a mind-body dualism aspect of it. So in that one, I changed, Freud's three cyclical model is id, ego, and superego. That was to operationalize his libidinous theory. This one is operationalizing mind-body dualism. So I changed it to a life force energy instinctual drive cognition model. So you have you have the mind-body dualism argument and the life force. Then you have evolutionary theory in the instinctual drive model. Then you have cognition for psychology, and then you have the connection between the micro behavioral frameworks and the macro behavioral frameworks. So it covers the full range. You can model, I model the mind-body dualism part, but that's an abstract causal model. You can only mathematize the empirical observation stemming from that model. So in physics style models, you're trying to take what is measurable to the extent that you can measure it, and then isolate your cause variable, which is force, which in this case is life force energies, because you have to differentiate animate beings from inanimate objects. So you have Heidegger's being and time. He's focusing on animate beings, particularly humans. And then you're relating on how human relationships change over time. So you have evolutionary theory, which is actually abstract causal, but then you have the four empirical observations of that, of people pursuing resources and mates, or economic gain, social status, where those observable realities, observable phenomenon, then adds up to people can say people are pursuing self-survival and survival of the species, because Darwinianism, evolutionary theory, is an abstract causality from watching people do those observable behaviors. Now, people do them constructively or destructively. That ends up to the constructive, destructive behavioral dynamics of how I integrate these theories. And if you can integrate these theories, then you only need these five major frameworks to mathematize the full range of philosophical theory. You can also then start discarding whatever fits into this model that's congruent. Those are the subfield frameworks you keep. Whatever doesn't, you discard. Just like with in two-force physics models and aeronautics, you have atmospheric density, gravity and atmospheric density. So you have your two forces. A heavier than air object has to get off the ground, so it has to overcome those two unseen motivational forces, and then that translates into people actually measure lift, weight, thrust, and drag. And as a Pareto optimal model, you can only optimize one or the other. And then even those models translate into business school mathematics of, you have to maximize or minimize cost, time of production, and then quality.
George, yeah. This is a comedy show. We're not doing physics. We're doing geopolitical comedy. And plus, like, is complicated for a lot of people to understand for many reasons. That
It really
like you deferred to your friend in the other one for the demolition stuff. We should refer to a navigational expert or a pilot for the physics stuff. Thanks to everybody who's bought me a coffee. This channel is not eligible for monetization. Self-promotion is not selling out. Also, thank you to everyone who's a patron, quietly in the background, getting no benefits, but supporting the working brother. If you thought I was done popping up in your feed with my funny stuff, I had to auto-censor myself there for YouTube. George, shall we continue with your slide set?
Yeah,
in case people didn't notice, this is George and I doing a turbo version. We have set ourselves a challenge. We've already done 2 slides and it's only been 11 minutes. Let's go into the relationship between macro forms.
Yeah, so we ended the other slide set with the rule of the many. That comes out of Aristotle's 6 forms of government, the value neutral forms. Rule of the many are few. So instead of just having 3 forms, in this slide set, I break it up to 4 forms. So it correlates better to the 4-category geopolitical form model, because you don't really have a rule of the one, you don't really have a rule of the few or the many. What the Pareto Moscow, Michel's iron law of oligarchy, Italian political power theorists suggested, you really have different variations of rule of the few. So you have rule of the more of the few or the less of the few is really what it breaks down to. So this correlates that to the first, second, and third rule category, which is what this framework does. So you're correlating across. This is another way that Aristotle's 6 forms of government interrelates with the per capita GNP ratio to the 4-category geopolitical form model. So go to 54.
And check out George's website. Link in the description. George's website.
We'll put this stuff up. I'll put
1959 format.
I'll put this stuff up on the website when it makes sense to. Right now, no, the people are not getting the slide sets.
But they can get more insight and access to you and other things probably. I don't know what your website offers, but in any case, you want to reach George, find him on his website. Upgrading Lipset's 1959 format. I probably got to zoom in a little bit here. Let me do that. All right. Macro independent variables. We've done this before.
Yeah, this is just a chart. I put these charts in every single section, so when my audience is when I eventually got to go present this some stuff. It's a long story, but yeah, I don't want to be flipping back through the slide sets, so I do put these 5 framework charts in every section. So that's why we're just zooming through them. So yeah, this is how I operationalize the different frameworks to laterally integrate them. Already went through it. The proper forms invest more, the elites invest more in their society. And so then your multiplier and your Gini coefficient improve. The perverted forms invest less in society. So then your Gini coefficient and your multiplier coefficient go the wrong direction. And then it correlates to the other outcomes. So that's what that slide set is about. Let's go to
55.
Yeah. So here, what this slide set is about, I started with Lipset's 3 macro variables. His concept of democracy linked to economic growth indicators, linked to moving countries from third world status to fourth world status. How I upgraded each one of those frameworks to cover the full range of human behavior. Again, people don't choose democracy, whatever your economic growth, population growth proportions are, tends to be the government you get. You don't really choose it. That determines your government. So then with those three macro frameworks in place, I then needed to fill in the evolutionary theory spots and the social psychology frameworks to meet Harsanyi's objectives of laterally integrating those disciplines. He wanted to integrate evolutionary theory, social psychology, sociology, political science, government form theories, and then economic growth theories is what he was trying to integrate in his article. Robert Ferris, in his Handbook of Modern Sociology, said that sociology was supposed to be a link between psychology and political science government form frameworks. They never figured out how to do it, so it turned into a Frankfurt School. It just turns into Marxist nonsense, which is what Tooby and Kosmides argued. With my models, it really proves that. It's not subjective. It should be objective. So I meet the sociological standard just by the fact that I'm integrating post-Freudian psychological theories to Aristotle's 6 forms of government. All right. I was talking to Vernon Smith is 20 years ago. No, more than 20 years ago. No, he won the Nobel Prize after that. I just happened to live near him and literally would go jogging past his office quite frequently. So I just made appointments to talk to him one day. I talked to him about how to take growth and equity models and turn it into what turned into my 4-category geopolitical form model. But he told me to read Tooby and Kosmides, The Adapted Mind, and I read that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, they already have evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology into an integrated model. So he was helping me out on both ends of the model. So that means all I needed to do was really just concentrate on building the post-Freudian psychological framework, which at that point I'd already had mostly done anyway. So anyway, let's go. Again, I always say this to the people in the chat. Please read their Tooby and Kosmides Psychological Foundations of Culture. It explains very, very explicitly how the social sciences abandoned the scientific project and is now a bunch of nonsense. So it's not just me saying it. It's evolutionary professors wondering why the university system got destroyed. If you read, that was written in 92. If you read Alan Bloom's Closing the American Mind, he explains it from the area of political science and political philosophy, how the field got taken over by the postmodernists, Frankfurt School postmodernists that were in the civil rights and Vietnam eras. Then they took the department chairs over in the 70s and 80s and destroyed the university system. So those two writings together, you get a very good time frame that, yes, by the time Yuri Bezmenov was giving his lectures on YouTube, not on YouTube, but back then it was on talk shows that are on YouTube now, I meant to say.
Yeah. We got it.
It was already fait accompli. So let's move to the next slide.
This is
building out from Lipsitz model, I got a macro independent variable, dependent variable, and outcome measure. Then I got Tooby and Kosmides integrated causal model of evolutionary psychology. So I really needed to build up the psychological part of it to get that micro independent variable. That was the missing variable. So by hypothetical deductive models, once you got 90% of the puzzle done, or 75% or whatever, well, actually it's in fifths. So once you got 80% of the model, you're looking for that last 20%. It really narrows down the possibilities because you're looking for the series of frameworks that fit the other pattern. So that makes it so much easier. So go to so go to 57. So I'd already read, and I was already pretty sure that Erich Fromm's his Biophilus necrophilus dichotomy that translates into the productive versus sadomasochistic character orientation dichotomy. Then it advanced Freud's Eros Thanatos dichotomy in Beyond the Pressure Principle in 1923. Freud had his libidinous theory, and then started to gravitate. He got some part of psychology done with that, with his life stage theories, and then wanted to make a grand model in psychology that would then turn into a macro model. So Fromm actually did that, and then he died. Nobody upgraded Lipsitz model, so Fromm's model sat. He had everything done Freud wanted to do, but then you need to relate it. Once you relate it to Aristotle's 6 forms of government, then per capita GNP ratio, the 4-category geopolitical form model, then yes, Erich Fromm accomplished everything Freud set out to do, building a 2-force model for the whole social sciences. So yeah, as I'm working on this, you found out that Fromm did it. And then, that's Erich Fromm there. Now, Fromm was in the Frankfurt School. He actually built a real theory of human behavior. And how was he rewarded for this? By being kicked out of the Frankfurt School, basically. So, yeah, no good deed goes unpunished. And then when I want to laterally integrate the disciplines, do I get rewarded for that? No, I get basically canceled out of academia. So yeah, it's no good deed goes unpunished. He was also working with Erich Fromm, and Carl Rogers was also up at Columbia with Maslow. And you have Columbia University, Barnard College, the women's school. And then you have the Jewish Theological Seminary and Union Theological all across the street from each other. So during the 50s and 60s, you had a very unique combination of talent that were trying to work on how to fuse evolutionary theories and psychology to improve our understandings of ideologies and religions. Most of this work was discarded, or they throw out the part where they write that men and women are different, the domain specific theory. And they really, if they teach Maslow and Rogers at all, they really neuter it and take out the most important aspect of it. But yeah, this model does support a mind-body dualism, intelligent design argument, because clearly there is a pattern in human behavior. All these writers in all these different fields wrote in a constructive, destructive format in one form or another, so they naturally integrate. And what the university system comes along, discards those frameworks and goes towards postmodernism nonsense instead. Foucault, Derrida, each iterate. Every time Marxism fails in the third world or in Eastern Europe, and they switch back to a market economy, the Western university system does not go over the autopsy, the failed Marxist experiments. They don't perform autopsies on them at all. On 58, this was again, Salvatore Maddi did this for his PhD thesis, and then upgraded in several different editions. He took the different psychological personality theories, he arranged them on the core periphery form of modeling. It's the same as value neutral bifurcated dichotomies that Aristotle had, but he took the different psychosocial conflict models and psychological fulfillment models. I break them into two. He's got more variants in there, but I'm going to leave it there. Freud had a psychosocial conflict model of basically your ego and id, and your superego and id rather, socially accept behavioral norms over time because you want to satisfy your drives to the extent possible, your somatic drives, with creating as little antagonisms in society as possible. So he had just done it to that level. The psychological fulfillment theorists say, well, no, actually, you get a psychological stasis in this. And if you actually have psychological disorders occur because people actually go towards antagonistic, they wrong people in a way that creates more enemies than creates allies. And having that kind of external enemy, creating enemies continuously, doesn't satisfy your own psychological needs. And it also creates antagonisms of a pressure between you and the outside world. So actually moving towards productive relationships creates a integrated psyche instead of a disintegrated psyche. And that actually has the most merit because, yeah, as I get older, I mean, I realized this when I was, 30, but as I get older, it just gets stronger. All the psychological disorders are because people do not have an honest work ethic. Yeah, all the narcissistic personality disorders, you're trying to cheat other people in some way. And those relationships, once the other people try to figure out that they've been ripped off, they exit the relationship. When you get into game theory and you get into defect strategies, when do people defect? Well, to rip people off financially. And then, yeah, they end up without stable relationship forms, which then drives them crazy later on. And then they have outbursts and things like that. So, yeah, that's why I say that it really comes from reading Fromm in combination with Jung's archetypes. So, yeah, go down to the next one. Oh, it's Maddi's series of books that has all this in one singular schema. So if you put Freud, Fromm, and Maddi together, the entire field of psychology is actually schematized by the early 1970s. And the modern psychologists got rid of those schemas, and now they've been teaching woke nonsense since the 80s.
George is joking, of course. This is a comedy show. And I really expect somebody to buy me a coffee for keeping quiet for so long and not interrupting him. Did you see that? That was unheard of on this show.
Well, if we can get through 3 more slides, we'll be done for the day.
You think we'll be done? No, we'll be done with the slides for the day. We won't be done for the day. I've got some things lined up that I want your comment on. But in any case, and some I haven't even seen, so we'll get my reaction too. In any case, advancing Freud's two-force model.
Yeah, so I just went over this. I actually talked over this in advance. So this is Freud's Eros and Thanatos life and death instinct theory is what Fromm advanced. So there's pictures of the 2 books there. So now, go down to the next one. Oh, okay. So that's Erich Fromm on the upper left, Freud on the upper right, Salvatore Maddi, and Carl Rogers on the lower right. That's who those is. I should list that so people don't, in case they don't automatically don't know.
Well, maybe you could update the slides. It's a never-ending updating of your slides, so why not?
It's true. All right, so Gintis in 2006, 2009 wants to laterally integrate.
Remind me, he was the mathematician?
Yeah, he's the economics game theory person. I did get to read his papers actually before they were published in 2006. I did email him some. He died when I was right after I came back from Iraq and Afghanistan, so I never had time to set up a meeting with him. But I did send him some of my earlier slide sets that that stuff was actually doable. I never really got a chance to come back and meet him. But yeah, he wrote his 2009 book that I didn't actually get to read till 2013, because for a while as the FNG in Baghdad, I was working the vehicle explosion detection checkpoints in Baghdad for a while, which is kind of an unusual because I'm working on this stuff and then I'm, doing that kind of job overseas. It's kind of incongruent, but well, whatever it is, it's not that I like doing that
You've
kind of stuff.
discussed it several times. I won't say ad nauseum because you've only disclosed some details, but we've covered it, and people who really want to know should get to know you through all of our talks, and amongst the very many talks that we have a playlist of here on YouTube, you can find George discussing his former lives and how some of his epiphanies came to him while he was looking at mirrors under trucks.
Yeah, well, supervising those that do, I should say.
Well, we cannot confirm or deny.
Yeah.
So back to Gintis and the wrong people.
Yeah, in this paper, he doesn't know that the frameworks already exist, so he thinks that you have to invent the common methodologies and the compatible frameworks. I already just demonstrated all of that already existed. I did tell him that, and I don't know, when did I email him? I emailed him, I traded emails with him in 2006 when I was presenting my papers initially, and then I didn't really contact him again. I want to say till 2015 or 16 or something like that. So then anyway, I met all of Harsanyi's criteria. I then had to meet all of Gintis's criteria because he's got a different set of criteria. So I built my model out to meet his criteria. I did see him. I did send him some of my earlier primitive slide sets that, yeah, all the frameworks existed. I mean, they clearly did. So in it, what was really interested in his 2009 book, yeah, the first couple of chapters are good. Then the rest of it is just game theory, which is just, it just fills up the rest of the book with just there's mathematical insights. I don't want to say it's nonsense, but you get a lot of insights of when humans cooperate and under what conditions human beings tend to cooperate, under what conditions they tend to defect and not cooperate, or if they really want to set people up for a con and then really rip them off maximally, what they do under certain conditions. So it's certainly good for those kinds of insights under when that conditions. So yes, so how come human beings don't exist in optimal relationship forms? Because if somebody defects, they maximize their income and minimize yours. So people tend to enter in relationships to minimize catastrophic risk. So therefore, all of human being relationships are suboptimal. So everything ends up at a Nash equilibrium. You want to go for Pareto optimal is what you want. And it takes a lot to get human relationships to Pareto optimal. Then you're back to talking about the effect of religions on society, which is what Paul Tillich and Fromm and Rogers and Maslow were talking about in the 50s and 60s up in northern Manhattan. So you get they're trying to improve the effectiveness of religions and ideologies. And game theory, actually, they didn't get into game theory, but from studying that and then having to study game theory to meet Gintis criteria and other people's criteria, I'm starting to, then you can correlate it the way he wanted it correlated. Another aspect is he's talking to sociologists who keep on telling them that the compatible frameworks don't exist. And he's very frustrated. You can tell he's very frustrated talking to psychologists. And then he's wondering, how could that field exist for over 100 years since Freud, and they don't have a general theory of their discipline yet? Well, the answer is they did. The wokesters came in and said, well, if men and women are different, then there's no basis for Marxist feminism. And by that, what I mean is Rousseau's essay on inequality and Engels' book, The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. So I'm talking about those two specific works in particular. I'm also talking about Eleanor Leacock's 44-page introduction to her 1970 reintroduction of Engels' book where she writes the linkage between Marxism and feminism. So this is hint, hint. People look up Eleanor Leacock, that's Leacock, and read. I think you can get that online, her 44-page introduction. Please read it, because that's the basis of linking Marxism to feminism, that all of first wave and second and third wave feminism tries to meet, that if they receive the same education as men, they will act the same. The paradox, or the way it backfired, is the more that they entered into the disciplines, they completely wiped out the objectivity and went to subjectivity at a time where all you had to do was slightly upgrade Lips's form and integrate it with other existing compatibilities, and you would have had this model 30 years ago or 40 years ago or whatever. You would have had it by the late 1970s.
Shocking.
So yes, the more Leacock got her way, the objectivity decreased in the social sciences. So, and anyway, you're back to then the experts tend to be Democrats teaching fake theories. That's what the upshot of that is. So in this book, he makes fun of the field of psychology by saying after 100 years, they only have nano models that have extreme insight into some specific limited form of human behavior that don't relate to any of the other nano models. In other words, he's saying, why can't you put all these little nano models into a big general theory of the discipline, through, make it a hierarchy. And in reality, the schema was already done. It was done by the combination of Freud, Fromm, and Maddi. If you read those 3 books, you can schematize the whole field of psychology. But nobody told Gintis, after decades of him working on this, nobody said what I just said. Had they told him that, he would have loved to have this knowledge in 1990 or whatever. Yeah, let's go to 62, and then I guess we're
taking a break.
So
give us an intro to Herbert Gintis' 5 criteria.
Gene culture coevolution. Boy, was I in the right spot to learn that. Cultures that have a very long history on ethnic, religious, and linguistic lines are very difficult to change. They've learned how to survive in their environment, and the government their family, tribal, and government forms are evolutionary stable in that environment, and it's very difficult to change them. So the regime change nation building in Iraq and Afghanistan has been a miserable failure. So yes, for me at first I didn't understand what gene culture coevolutionary theory was. I had to read about it and study it while I was overseas, obviously. Okay, I'm supervising local nationals, so the perfect environment to do it. And now I'm like, yeah, I'm really, it's almost like God sent me there to go learn this. It really is. And then, socio-psychological theory of norms, you're back to Freud going through different life stages. If people mature, they learn how to get along with each other in productive relationships that are mutually cooperative. If they're immature and try to cheat each other too much, well, then people exit relationships once they feel they're getting cheated, which there's a lot of game theory on that. That's very, very insightful for when humans do that. So yes, you can relate his game theory to the psychological theories if you laterally integrate them with Freud's beyond the pressure principle, Fromm's anatomy of human destructiveness, and Salvatore Maddi's personality theories, a comparative analysis. So you can link all of that. Next does, I just went over 3 with game theory there, like that. So the rational actor model and complexity theory is already in my unified behavioral theory. When I do the geopolitical models, it's done in a rational actor model. So when I do the geopolitical models, it's done in a belief preference constraint system of rational actor models. So that's not in the unified behavioral theory. It's in it when I apply it to the geopolitical models that I've already done a lot of them on Working Brother shows the past couple of years. So that's where you find that.
Which is why I'm smirking and trying not to interrupt. Anyway, continue. Complexity theory.
Complexity theory is your elements in your model and the relationships. I know when I was on with other people and I'm talking about different things occurring in different places, I'm talking about the dots and then what connects them. So you're talking about the elements and the relationships. So that's what complexity theories are about. So in this case, I put the whole philosophical and social sciences into a 2-force, 5-element model. And then I stated the relationship between the frameworks. That's the relationship between the elements. When I'm talking about my geopolitical theories, I'm talking about what's occurring in economic development theory is about productive relationships. Geopolitical theory is about negative sum, zero sum, and negative sum relationships. So there you have the relationships between psychological theories and economic development theories and geopolitical theories. One's productive, the other one's destructive. I know you wanted me to talk about the different cluster A, cluster B, cluster C psychology sets and the relationships to the current people that are running the United States government of creating the conditions under which what they fear the most actually backfires and becomes a negative self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, yeah, this kind of gets into those relationships. I didn't want to get into it and name names specifically, and we're not going to. But yeah, this is the essence of complexity theory. I always use the aeronautics model of gravity and atmospheric density versus the 4 elements of lift, thrust, weight, and drag. Because you're talking about the 2 forces it takes to get a heavy air object off the ground. If you want to have a cargo plane that takes a tremendous weight of cargo a tremendously long distance, like a 747 cargo plane can, or a C-5 Galaxy, or a C-17 can, that's going to cost a lot of money. You're going to need big, huge engines with thick wings. It's going to go a long distance, but with a lot of drag. So if you increase your wing thickness, it increases drag, decreases your terminal velocity. So when you start to state your relationships between variables, you're talking about if you want to increase payload and distance, yeah, you've got to increase your wing thickness, but then it's going to really slow terminal velocity down, and it's going to take a long time to get there.
George,
compared to hold on a second, compared to a 747 passenger plane or a 777. So when you talk
George,
about complexity theories, you're talking about the relationships between variables. Go ahead.
Let's stick to petrodollars and pipelines and not planes and payloads.
No, people need a concrete example of how to start building models. So how I took knowledge of one thing and then made the social sciences like that.
I got it. Complexity theory.
I know.
We'll get into it. We'll get into it in more detail.
Yeah.
They should check the other videos that we did like last year or the year before that.
Right.
Also, stay tuned and subscribe because we're going to get into it in the coming videos as well, because we've got the slide set going for forever. So we're definitely going to continue and see what there is to see in the coming recording. But that's it as far as slides are concerned for today. I've got George here, and I've got this video of Trump responding to being called garbage, and his supporters being called. Are you going to vote, George?
Yeah.
Have you voted already?
No, I got to drive back.
Are you going to vote several times?
Yeah, of course, early and often. Why not?
Do you have any foreign friends who are coming to vote? I hear it's like a trend.
That's just conspiracy theories.
Right? All those pictures that we're seeing on X and Twitter, it's conspiracy theories. All right, let's see what Trump has to say here.
And I hope their campaign is about to apologize for what Joe Biden just said.
Who's this guy, by the way? Who's this guy who's talking?
Oh, yeah, that's DeSantis talking to Trump. He's the governor of Virginia. I mean, of
that's
of Florida. Of Florida.
Oh, this is DeSantis. Okay.
Not garbage. We are patriots who love America.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Running, Mr. President.
I didn't. I thought that was a different video. That's Marco Rubio. He's the senator from Florida.
All right.
The microphone.
Yeah, I thought DeSantis was older. In any case, let's see what Trump has to say.
Wow.
USA.
That's terrible. That's what it says. That's what it says. So you have, remember Hillary, she said deplorable?
Remember, you can buy a Trump combat knife.
And then she said irredeemable, right? But she said deplorable. That didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right? But he doesn't know. You have to please forgive him. Please forgive him, for he not knoweth what he said. These people, it's terrible, terrible. Terrible to say a thing like that, but he really doesn't know. He really, honestly, he doesn't. And I'm convinced that he likes me more than he likes Kamala.
And I
Who do you like more? Or are you not public about your politics?
Look, voting is a very, very private thing, and I do not disclose that to anybody.
Right?
By the way, just make America great again. By the way.
Yeah. It's funny, like, ever since I was a kid growing up, like, you reach puberty and you discover sex and these taboo topics, and then you grow up and then people start talking about all kinds of things, and it's all, I've always found it extremely weird and bizarre how people sometimes are more willing to discuss their intimate relations with their significant other, as in spouse, as in wife, as in, like, we did it so and so and did it over there, but they won't tell you how they voted. Like, oh no, that's too private. It's like, what? I don't understand.
And make America healthy again too.
Yeah, that's a whole new thing going on. What about make the Fed not exist anymore and bring the greenback back?
And I hope their campaign is about to apologize.
Wait, no, shut up. I want the next video. There we go. We've got Janet Yellen, I think, with Russian voiceover. Yeah. When they asked her how the reserve currency is doing, the Department of Treasury thing fell off. What do you have to say about the Russian propaganda that we are witnessing about the dominance of the U.S. greenback, which is not even backed by Green's back, failing? I'm picking words very specifically here. Trying not to offend anyone.
I've been saying for, I don't know, well over a decade now that we're going to hit, inflation at 30 trillion and higher levels of inflation at 35 trillion, and then catastrophic inflation at, galloping inflation at 40 trillion. Yeah, the problem is we're 10 years ahead of schedule. So yeah, that's if if Trump wins, I mean, instead of, people were talking about the penny plan, just cut the budget, 1% a year, and then let economic growth gradually catch up to it. But now it's
U.S. national debt clock 35.8.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think somebody said we're adding $1 trillion per quarter now or something really ridiculous. And we have $1 trillion of debt and just interest, which of course just goes to the banks. So there you go.
I want to bring up a little video that popped up on my feed, video saved from 10 years ago or shared 10 years ago, of French tourists being tracked by their mobile phone data. This harks back to...
You mean the GPS chips in these things? Is that what you're talking about?
Not even the GPS chips. This is just geolocating which cell towers they've been using and how they move to the rural areas over the weekends and holidays. And fun. 10 years ago stuff.
Oh, I mean, but people do that anyway. If you have a place to go to in the country, I mean, in the New York area, people do that a lot. They have houses in the Catskills or in the Hudson Valley or in the Berkshires in Connecticut or places down the Jersey Shore. So, yeah, I mean, and to some extent, people have always done that. But yeah, now there's other reasons to really get out of the inner city when you don't have to be there.
Yes, there are. And there will be even more. We're 51 minutes into this recording. I want to get your take on this that came across mine and your feed. I shared it with you. This is the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, IMEC, which is that pipeline stuff that we were talking about and alluded to a couple of times about this little kink in their plan. Let's put it that way. And
yeah, there's a bunch of kinks in those plans because if you're going to write that, again, you get the rational act and rational choice models. How should I even frame this? There's so many different ways. Hold on. I know how to frame it. Where is it? It's targeted. That's how it is. It's targeted, just like the targeted operation that's going on in Gaza. This is targeted geopolitical bombing of the whole region so that they can never get along, basically. Yeah, I was talking to one of my interpreters in Baghdad back in early 2010 or whatever that was. And I was talking about, we had Ugandan, third country National Guards. And they're talking about they're flying back to Uganda. And I said, oh, no, we're all just going to drive back to Uganda. And they all started to laugh. And I showed them on the map. It's physically possible there's roads that go there. And the point that I was getting, I was pointing out North America. And yeah, it used to be safe to drive all the way from Alaska all the way down to Panama. I mean, it used to be safe. Now Mexico it's not safe there anymore. But anyway, I was just making the comparison, and my interpreter just started laughing. I said, how come these countries don't get along? You can't just drive across the borders. There's no Schengen zone there, right? And I had a really very funny interpreter. I hope he's still alive. He just says, "Oh, those effing Arabs, we don't get along." And yeah, they're very, because then he started explaining how the different tribes, and people can watch YouTube videos about the different tribal conflicts. So you have the Sunni versus Shia split there. You also have the millennia of, actually it's not millennia, tribal conflicts. I mean, these things go back to biblical times. I mean, these tribal conflicts are really old.
I think you're just I don't know what the term is because it's not mansplaining if you're doing it for the British Empire. It's, I guess, empiring. But yeah, I think it can go back to the Sykes-Picot. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that's when a lot of this stuff started, and all the other similar British guys who drew lines on maps that
there's
they
a
knew nothing
reason.
about.
Well, oh no, they did that on purpose.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm giving the background to explain that. So you try to jump ahead, but you don't give. You're saying
We're 55 minutes in, man. We're 55 minutes in. We don't have time. We don't have time for the full explanation. We got to give them the, like, you know, TLDR version. People don't have time. They don't have appetite. They don't have attention spans even. And as far as attention spans are concerned, that's a perfect segue. I almost forgot, but I actually remembered. In the last talk that we recorded, we discussed these and how you can range things. And this here is basically a human at 10 meters, if I'm not mistaken. And then, or no, maybe this is at whatever distance, and then 4 meters, I guess it says here. And then as it goes on, you can range how big that person is, I guess. I'm not a expert military optics shooter.
In yards is based on 2 yards being a male being 6 feet tall. Mm-hmm. So then you can hit your reticles on there if he's underneath that. You know, if he's underneath that, he's 100 yards away.
These are tank.
If he's underneath, visuals. Just hold on a second. So
I'm listening to you.
The way you want to range that, you're using the other reticle for if you're trying to hit a tank. It's a different range. You're using a different weapon. But if you're using a smaller caliber weapon, you're trying to range people. So you're ranging a 6 foot tall person is going to be under the biggest scale at 100 yards. And then every 100 yard increments, he's going to fall into one of those different thresholds. So if a person's at the smallest threshold, well, first of all, if he's probably not in range of an M16, you're going to need a 308 or a 300 Win Mag to get out that far. So you can quickly range, get a firing solution, know what MOA of elevation that you need, whether you're going to range it in your reticle or whether you're going to range it in your elevation knobs. They're all ranging in reticles now. So you don't have time to count the number of clicks you need for each 100 yards off of your 100 yard or 200 yard range, so you can get a firing solution real quick, fire a shot in 1 second rather than 3 or 4 or 5 or 60 minutes, or a minute rather. It's to make your shot solutions very, very quick.
So this is a tank reticle, and basically this is the mock-up of a tank and how it'll appear at 150 meters, I guess, at that little thing that we can also see here, where the image of the tank. This is the vintage one, I'm guessing, from the ye oldie times. I've got something else here. I can't remember. Oh yes, this hilarious piece of news. Netanyahu warns Putin that Iran wants to destroy 6 million Jews. This is coming from Bloomberg, and I was like, no way, this can't be real. This can't be real. This has to be a meme. Somebody has to have made this up and lied about it. But no, this is real, behind a paywall on Bloomberg. Netanyahu warns Putin that Iran wants to destroy 6 million Jews. I really need to finish this stuff because with the pipeline of the first one, it has to go through Shia territory plus different tribes. So there's a number of ways, theoretical ways you could easily map the pipeline routes through the area. But when it goes through Syria, it's going through Bashar al-Assad's Shia area. And they want to get Bashar al-Assad out of the way. So it only goes through Sunni territory. So certain people are backing
Sunni versus Shia rivalries. Putin does not want, the neocons want to destabilize Iran so they can totally reroute the pipelines, get the Shia control out of Syria and Lebanon, and run their pipelines that way. Putin does not want them to destabilize Iran and then access Caspian Sea oil and gas, because the end goal is actually break up the Russian Federation into a whole bunch of oblasts and republics. So for Putin, he wants Iran to stay intact, finish the INSTC corridors, and have an access to sea and bridge to India. The Western sea powers are trying to keep India away from aligning with Russia and Pakistan by proposing the other shipping routes that go through the UAE and then through the different Middle Eastern countries.
George, next time we'll do a review of the BRICS summit and who was there and what they might have talked about. We'll do like gossip about the BRICS summit and stuff like that. And we'll get into some more of your slides. I'm playing the music in the background. That is the end of that. We have gone over the 1 hour mark. George, thank you again for sticking around, having the patience with my terrible humor and shitty jokes. Everyone who stuck around, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. New people, hi, welcome. Hope you liked it. Check out some of the other stuff. Also, this is pretty graphic, but pretty, accurate with what's going on these days. Just wanted to give a shout out to those people who don't have the cup that you have. I have no idea what you're saying. No, I can't hear you. Just the music is too loud. George, the music is too loud. Can't hear you. All right. Thank you, George. Sorry about that. Everyone, see you around. Peace out.